This is Dr. Rosie Kuhn, and this podcast series is called Spiritual Immersion, Taking the Plunge. And the intention of this podcast is to support and empower you to explore and expand and elevate your level of awareness and your level of living into that awareness, into your highest knowing, your highest truth, your highest principles, your highest contribution to the world. And so for the last 44 of these podcasts, we've been talking about elements of that. And each of these podcasts is really attempting to look at what are some of the elements of this practice of spiritual immersion, or cultivating a relationship with our spiritual self in a way that's expanding, an expansion of who we know ourselves to be, an expansion of accepting who we are. So quite often, we have a sense of what a spiritual person is like and what a spiritual person isn't like. And so we go, this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. And then, much like I talked about in the previous podcast, we self-deprecate and we get mad at ourselves. We get sometimes hateful or depressed that we are who we are, as opposed, and we're not who we think we should be. And part of this process is to come to acceptance and to appreciation and to acknowledge and love and honor who you are, not who you should be or could be or would be, but who you are now. In the tapping practice, one of the things is I totally and completely love and accept myself. And that was a great mantra for me, that no matter what, no matter how angry I was, how sad I was, how self-deprecating I was, I would stop and say, I totally and completely love and accept myself. So this is part of that process of talking about how do you see what's good and where you need improvement, in a sense, where you're moving towards. In our educational system, regardless of the right, wrong, good, or bad, we are in a process of elevating our level of intelligence, our level of capacities, and utilizing tools such as reading, writing, and arithmetic. We're cultivating capacities to understand the world, and we have to do that incrementally. And this is the same process with us as human beings. And this is the emphasis on spiritual immersion, taking the plunge, is that this is an incremental process of elevating yourself to whatever the next level of elevation is. Some people think they should be there, they've arrived, and that there's no further to go. We're always elevating ourselves to another level. Again, in high school, we're taking courses, biology 101, and then we take biology 102, biology 103. There's that elevation of those capacities. For those of us who go to college or go to trade school, we're learning, and there's an internship. There's a place where we need to practice what we've learned. We can't just jump into something after taking courses and think we really know what we're doing, because most of the time we don't. We can think and theorize, I know how to do that, but when we're in the practice of it, it's very different. And part of this process of spiritual immersion process is we have thoughts and we have theories, but then it's only through the direct experience of the experience can we really know what we're talking about, or what somebody has told us, or a spiritual philosophy or spiritual principles. And that's big practice, is to actually practice it. And one of the analogies I use with my clients is to say, okay, this particular circumstance that you're in, where you're challenged to use tools that are different than you have, it's like an internship where you're training yourself to know at a greater degree and experience and bring in training and discipline that you haven't yet used. So internships are that. When I learned to be a therapist, I went to an internship where I practiced my craft. Or people who are learning to be a mechanic, people who are learning to be graphic artists, they learn the tools little by little by little. One of my clients is wanting to learn Photoshop. He doesn't know how to do it. He has to take the time to learn the incremental elements that come together that cultivate mastery at some degree, or mastery completely. And that's what we're doing here, I think, on the earth, is we're cultivating capacities, and we're training ourselves and disciplining ourselves to live in our fullest potential, our fullest capacity. We can't do it all in this lifetime. Maybe some of us do, but most of us have had past lives or parallel lives where we're working stuff out, so that we're, in terms of our internship, we're growing our capacities and our trainings and our skill development, so we're able to be with more in less conflict and more harmony and peace. So today I wanted to focus on something that's kind of an interesting element of spiritual practice. I grew up in a Catholic family and Catholic church, and sacrifice is a huge conversation in at least in that religion, and I think in a lot of religions, there's sacrifice as part of the process. And also in families or marriages, we say there has to be compromise. And what happens with the idea of sacrifice or compromise, which is basically the same thing, is somehow we believe we have to lose in order to gain. That we have to give up something in order to have something else. If I want a happy partner, then I have to compromise. But then if I'm compromising, I might have a happy partner, but I might not be happy in myself. I might feel resentment or resistance or frustration. And so that compromise isn't going to be helpful in terms of that relationship, that partnership. And this is true with children, or my dog Gracie, or friends, or partners as in marriages. The compromise quite often violates the sanctity of the individual, violates the sanctity of you in service to something else. And the same with sacrifice, is I sacrifice for my children, and is one place that we sacrifice. Or we sacrifice at work. I sacrifice time with my family so I can be making more money and create more stability and security. There's that trade-off, we think. And this is a hard one, because it's so ingrained in our consensus view of reality that it's hard to get that maybe that's not true. Now, I'm saying it's absolutely not true that you have to sacrifice and compromise, but it's hard to practice it, because we're so entrained to think, no, I have to. For instance, a client of mine, I'll call him Kyle. He's 25. He's just learning. He's pretty new in the business of being and being conscious, but he's learning how brilliant he is inside all of this. He's trying to figure out what his career is and what he wants to do in his life. And so we have a really lovely expanded conversation about what makes him happy, what brings joy, what's creative for him, where is there an expansion of him and makes him, happy to go to work. And so we discussed that, and then the next thing out of his mouth was, yeah, and I know that I'm going to have to make some compromises. And it's like, wait a second, we're having this conversation in service to you knowing that you don't have to have compromises. You can have exactly what you want as you want it. There's no compromise necessary. And he just kind of looked at me virtually, and it's like, how is that possible? And we only need to make choices based on what we want. And this is a huge part of the conversations I have with my clients of what is it you want. And then there's which is, I'm committed to having this. I'm committed to having a great life, having fun at work, being joyful, active, engaged, creative in my work. Excellent. But, and the yes buts will point to a conflicting commitment or an underlying commitment. My boss might not want that, or I might have to give this up, or I might have to give that up. And again, this is so entrained in us to think this way, we don't give much time to this is what I want, and this is where I'm going to go, and this is what I'm going to create in my life. This is how exceptional athletes and exceptional writers and philosophers get to the point where they're at is because they say, I'm not going to compromise myself. And you don't have to compromise yourself to have a partnership. You don't have to compromise yourself at all. You just have to see what it is that you really want. And that is, in a sense, the trajectory. Now, if you want a partnership, and it's beginning to see, okay, is the partnership more important? Is my partner's happiness more important than my well-being in what I might be compromising? And you have to look at that. And some people make some extraordinary, challenging choices based on their values. And it's not a sacrifice. It's a true commitment to here's what is important to me. And that is important enough to me that that's what I'm going to do. That's the choice I'm going to make. There's no sacrifice. It's just the isness of this is my highest truth, my highest knowing, my highest contribution. This is what I'm going to do. It's big to be able to give up the idea that you're sacrificing something. If you're sacrificing something, now you're in conversation of being a victim, perhaps, or losing out, perhaps, having less, something of that nature. When, again, a spiritual principle that I live with and live in, and this is one of many that are part of any universal spiritual tradition, is you lack nothing in this moment. You lack nothing. There's no lack. It's our perceived consciousness, it's our perceived world, it's consensus view of reality that says, oh, you lack or you will lack, and so therefore you'll be sacrificing. So this is a challenging conversation we'll come to again and again, so that you can begin to say, oh, I see how I compromise versus how I can hold my own ideas of what I want, listening to another person or another situation, another aspect of myself, and come to a place where everybody wins. There's no sacrifice, potentially. Potentially like 100% potential, but in terms of like, wow, that's big work. A long time ago when I was married, and I was looking for a bedspread for our bed, and I had one thing in mind and my husband liked something else, and it was like, well, I want what I want. And it's like, well, he wants what he wants. Is there a third position where we both like the same thing? So I kept looking, and I'd say, hey, how about this one? And finally we both agreed on one that we both liked. So nobody lost. There was no compromise. We found a third position. And that's what a lot of this work is in spiritual immersion process. This is looking for that place where there is no compromise. There is only, we all get what we want. And I know that's absolutely so hard to hear, and it's so absolutely true. It just takes a great deal of practice and training and internships to get us to that level of truth, that level of knowing and experiencing that. So that's pretty much it for today. Again, there is no compromise. There's no lack. There's nothing that you have to give up for something else. It's really a matter of choosing, noticing what you're choosing and from where you're choosing, how you're choosing, and all of those things are part of this spiritual immersion process. All right. If you'd like to leave me an email with your questions or comments, please feel free to do that at rosie@theparadigmshifts.com, or you can visit my website. Website is theparadigmshifts.com. All right, big hugs and bye for now.